It was a hot summer afternoon when I received a notice from the HOA. They claimed I was violating their rules by attempting to dig a pond on my 150-year-old ranch. At first, I was bemused. The pond was meant to preserve the land, provide water for my livestock, and maintain the natural ecosystem. It wasn't just a project. It was part of a legacy that my family had nurtured for generations. But Karen, ever the self-appointed enforcer of HOA mandates, had decided that her rules were more important than history, legality, or common sense. I reviewed the notice, noting how the HOA absurdly assumed authority over a property that was clearly private, with documentation spanning decades. They demanded that I cease construction immediately. This wasn't the first time Karen had tried to assert HOA control over my ranch, and I knew that ignoring her would only escalate the situation. But I also knew I had leverage she could never anticipate. The ranch's water system was extensive, supplying irrigation for pastures, water troughs for livestock, and even a few small ponds that my family had maintained for over a century. In a calculated move, I decided to make a point. If the HOA truly wanted to block a project on my land, they would have to deal with consequences they were unprepared for. I accessed the main water control system for the property, ensuring the safety of my livestock and essential operations. Then, I carefully shut off the water supply to the section of the system that served the HOA's neighborhood. Their homes, parks, and communal spaces depended on this water. Within hours, the residents noticed the taps running dry, sprinklers stopping, and frustration rising. Karen called the HOA office in a frenzy, demanding that someone restore water immediately. I picked up her call calmly. "The pond project is on my property," I explained, "and any attempt to stop it is illegal. You are welcome to enjoy your neighborhood once you respect the property boundaries." Karen sputtered, clearly realizing that her threats were meaningless. She had assumed she could assert authority, but she hadn't anticipated that the water infrastructure, which serviced their 1,800 cattle and community, was under my control. Her anger reached a boiling point. She threatened legal action, tried to rally neighbors, and even suggested emergency intervention. But I remained composed, documenting every interaction, making it clear that any retaliation against me would be illegal and enforceable in court. I also notified local authorities in advance, ensuring that if Karen escalated, there would be clear evidence of her harassment and trespassing. Over the next few days, the neighborhood began to feel the consequences. Their lawns wilted, fountains stopped, and the massive herd of cattle they relied on for certain agricultural purposes couldn't get water. Panic spread among the residents, who had previously followed Karen's every dictate. It became evident that her attempts to control private property had resulted in a tangible loss for the community. Karen finally arrived in person, her face red with fury. I met her calmly at the property boundary. "You've underestimated the authority and resources I have over my land," I said evenly. "This is private property. Your HOA rules don't apply here. The pond will proceed, and until you respect property rights, your water supply remains offline." Humiliated and powerless, Karen retreated. She had expected compliance, intimidation, or fear, but she found none. She left with a very public defeat, her attempts to assert authority utterly crushed. The neighborhood learned a critical lesson. Entitlement and HOA titles do not grant control over land that belongs to someone else. The pond was completed without further interference. My livestock thrived, and the ecosystem of the ranch remained intact. As for the HOA neighborhood, they were forced to restore their own water systems independently, understanding for the first time that overreach has consequences. Karen's reputation was further diminished, her authority weakened, and I had reinforced the lesson that private property, backed by legal rights and strategic action, cannot be controlled by those with mere titles. From that day on, any attempt by the HOA to interfere with my land was met with immediate pushback. My property remained fully secure, my projects uninterrupted, and Karen's overreach had been decisively neutralized. The lesson was clear: respect boundaries or face consequences you cannot ignore.